They've tried to do some themselves. It's now hurting them. They've gone 6 months without. Their business is, suffering. The brand is suffering. The other staff are annoyed because they're a bit stretched and there's no light in the tunnel, and they've wasted quite a bit of cash and time and effort if you have to quantify it. And then they come to you. We need them 6 months ago.
Welcome to Monday Mornings with Michelle, the new business podcast. Whether you're kicking off your day or kickstarting your business, Michelle is going to kick your ass into next week with the essential fours: strategy, systems, support, and state of mind. Now, welcome to center stage, Michelle Nedelec.
Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Tom. Tom, thank you so much for being here today with us.
That's it. My pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
Nice. For those of you who don't know, Tom is joining us from the land down under, and it is 7 o'clock in the morning there. So I was just congratulating him on being super astute. I know you guys all wake up that early, but I don't. So tell me, give us everybody the 5,000-foot view of who you are and what you love to do.
Yeah, so firstly, my name's Tom Hitchcock. I'm the founder of a company called Purple Patch Consulting. Actually, a quick question to yourself there, Michelle. Do you know what a purple patch is?
I do not. I know what the patch is and I know what purple is, but I'm not sure what they are together.
Okay, all right. So I'll take one step backwards. Okay, so I'm based in Sydney, Australia. Okay, but my accent is very British. So just to clarify, there, people haven't got the sound settings incorrect. I am from another part of the world, living in this part of the world, a different part of the world to you. Okay. Now in England, a purple patch is a bit of a common saying. Okay, some people know it, some people don't. And a purple patch is effectively a run of good fortune when you're having a lucky period. Okay, so everything seems to be landing the right side of the fence. Everything's going well for you. Okay, now you know it. You'll hear it occasionally in the media where there's a purple patch of movies out at the moment, or there's this team's having a bit of a purple patch, and so forth. So it's a really good time for people, businesses, or whoever they want to apply it to. Okay, so I just thought I'd share that with you because
it's close to a purple haze, but you don't have to go there to get one. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, you could say that. Yes. But yeah, it's a common saying, a bit like being on cloud nine or something, where you're feeling ecstatic and everything you touch is turning to gold.
Love
it. So if you know the name of that saying, its meaning, then my company name makes a lot more sense. If you don't, it makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, so I thought I'd just interject there and explain that. But that's my company. Front facing, what this is a recruitment company. This is something I've been doing for many years, of course, UK and Australia, and we're expanding. But the idea behind this is we're trying to change the perception of recruitment through how we do business significantly. So we've got a couple of trademarks around it, and it's really quite exciting what we're achieving at the moment. But behind the recruitment, we've got a whole load of other things that we do. Okay, so from business coaching, we do neuro change practitioner for individuals and organisations. We've got a whole load of things that we're doing, which is fantastic. But it all comes back to the same place: it's serving businesses. And what we find, if we're talking to people about their staffing and their workplace and their performance, then the conversation naturally goes elsewhere anyway. Hence why we're not just doing the recruitment.
Love that. So let's back up the bus a little bit because I got tons of questions to ask you about what you're doing right now. But how did you get into recruiting?
So that's a good question. So my story is quite varied and colourful in many respects. So back prior to the GFC, I was living in Spain. I had a nightclub and I had 5 call centres. And life was good. I was enjoying myself. I was making more money than I could spend, and it's all done accidentally. So it's very, very organic and lots of fun. GFC did put an end to that. So I got out okay, not as I would have liked.
And just for those who don't know, what is the GFC?
The global financial crisis.
Hey.
Yeah. So yeah,
A little
it's
thing,
Spain.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. There's been a collection, hasn't there? But yeah, so Spain was hit quite hard in all fairness. They had 50% youth unemployment, and you can actually feel it as you're walking out and about, and that significantly affected myself, my business, and so forth. But it's around about that time I'd had enough of Spain. I'd had enough of what I was doing, and I gave it some thought as to where I wanted to be next, and it was Australia for a variety of reasons. Okay, apart from it being a lovely place anyway. But I couldn't just get into Australia with, with being a business owner, which is coming out of that business. I needed to pick up a new trade, and when I did my research, recruitment was the closest trade, if you like, to what I was already doing. So I was already hiring, training, retaining, attracting talent. So I figured I was kind of doing it anyway. So I went back to the UK to learn it in the middle of GFC, which is probably the hardest, the baptism of fire you could get in an industry. But yeah, that's what I did, and I've been doing it now for, well, since then, so it's just 14 years in its entirety.
Very cool. So, gross assumption, you're doing it internationally, are you? Or
Yes, we are. We're just opening up our new office in Singapore next week, which is nice. And we do have, well, we've got a lot of enterprise level clients, which means that the same person will contact me. Do you have someone for Mexico? Have you got someone for wherever, Dubai? You know, it's a constant. So, and the rules are the same. We can just keep trading.
very cool. And is there any industry that you particularly love to work with?
Okay, so we're a generalist agency on purpose, and that's out of experience when when I was in employment in recruitment. So I'd sometimes see a highly specialised recruiter that does very well, but the moment something changed, whether it be the market, they've lost a client, or they've had to change their specialism for whatever reason, okay, I found that 9 times out of 10 they failed. They struggled to get going again. So what that told me, firstly, is they become product dependent, okay? But more importantly, is they become complacent, so they've lost their professional attributes, okay? So when someone engages a recruiter, they don't engage them to know more about their own business than they know about it themselves. So you don't need to be specialised. What you must be able to do is be able to be professional in what you do as a recruiter, as a consultant, okay? Which means you should be able to be agile and turn your hands to any role, any place, and do anything, because you actually genuinely listen and get the information you need to do your due diligence and determine if it's something that we can work on or not.
Very cool. So, when it comes to placement of agencies, like you mentioned enterprise, which is kind of a structure of business, if you will. Are there certain kind of industries, though, that are more apt to look for recruitment from you?
Okay, so our areas where we've had most success have been IT, sales, and construction. Where they've been the areas where we seem to get most of our wins. We've had the construction boom. So when I was doing the recruitment here, my clients were construction, and they'd still just ring me on mobile. So there's a bit of a backwash from when I was employed. Sales right now is post-COVID. Everybody wants to make up for lost time, fixed budgets, and so forth. So they're like hen's teeth at the moment, or at least anybody any good, because everyone's doing the exact same thing, exact same time. So you're creating a false economy on supply demand. And IT's been a constant for quite some time, because you know it's like at the moment you get a brand new laptop, it's automatically old, you know. It doesn't really represent IT in its entirety, but these things update so quick, technology's moving so fast, that firstly we need to keep on top of the staffing to reflect that. But the systems and processes for companies changes. There's always something new, shiny, faster, sexier, and then subsequent problems which come from it, which will include things like cyber attacks, your cyber security for the business, for your IP. So all of these, it's been a constantly growth industry. So those areas we've been having a lot of success with recently.
Very cool. So what are some of the problems that business owners make when hiring, period. And then if you could jump into, and especially when they're hiring international, because I'm sure there's things that we all do wrong the best of times, but
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a can of worms. So how long is this podcast for? How
yeah,
long have we got? We've got
right.
58 hours.
We're going to
Right.
go point form for the next 3 weeks.
It's like anything, isn't it? So
Top
it's a bit
three.
like if I've got a client as a home builder, okay, and I go and build my own home, they'll tell me off later. They say, Tom, why don't you come to us? We could do it quicker, faster, better. We know what we're doing. This is what we do. Okay. Generally, when I speak to a client, they've tried to do something themselves. It's now hurting them. They've gone 6 months without. Their business is, suffering. The brand is suffering. The other staff are annoyed because they're a bit stretched, and there's no light in the tunnel, and they've wasted quite a bit of cash and time and effort if you were to quantify it. And then they come to you. We need them 6 months ago. Okay, so this is the common thing. So I think in businesses we just need to identify what we can do ourselves, what we can't. Okay, and at the moment we try to do something ourselves of a whim, especially if it's trying to save time and money or either or, then that's where it goes wrong. It's just realise what we're good at, what we're not good at, and let's just outsource that so I can focus on my core business. So generally when I speak to my clients, especially people that are not particularly well versed with liaising with their agent, they do tend to come to us too late. So there's still limitations. We can only deal with the cards that we've been dealt as well. So the more limitations, the tougher the outcome is likely to be. So they come to us a little bit too late, and sometimes we can fix it up quickly, but then they've wasted. It puts their nose out of joint for what they've done already and the time and money they've spent on it. So that's probably the main thing where people go wrong with their agency engagement themselves. The second thing is how they go to market as well. So a lot of companies do rely purely on advertising of one which way, shape, form or another. Okay, and the problem with the advertising is you're only really working, if you're lucky, with 12% of the marketplace. Okay, so it changes a little bit with the economic pendulum and things changing. But 12% make up the active candidate base. They're the ones that tend to be looking out of the other 88 who are passive and fairly content in their roles. So you're firstly fishing in a smaller pool for candidates. It will sound bad, but generally it's not the best pool either. Okay, you will find the occasional gem in there, but the problem is they're also applying to other companies at the same time. So you now got a bidding war on the one person you have found that's decent, the others, you'll politely pass on, and you think that's your market. When there's a whole 88% that you haven't tapped into that probably represent the better candidates for you, lots more of them, okay? And they're not applying for any jobs, so there's no bidding war. So the trick is to get into those passives just as they're becoming active, just before.
Very cool. So that's one awesome trick to the trade that you have. You'd mentioned that you have a different way of looking at recruitment. What are some of your unique ways of doing things that differentiate you?
So we've got a couple of trademarks. The first one we've had, and you can see on our website, purplepatchconsulting.com, is we've got the trademark for the science of recruitment, okay, which when I put up there made a lot of sense to me, made a lot less sense to other people, so they've been misunderstood. However, I can explain it a little bit more for us, more recent trademark, which is Omni-recruiting, okay? And so what this means is people assume because we've got science of recruitment, we're going to apply a scientific methodology towards what we do for you, okay? Sounds fantastic, but it's not true. We're dealing with people. It's like herding cats telepathically, okay? And every client's different. There's so many variables. If we were to put something rigid in place, it's not going to work, okay? What it is meant to do is, I think I said this earlier, is we're trying to change the perception of recruitment. This is for candidates, this is for clients, this is for staff, this is for everybody who has a touch point around recruitment. And to do that, we need to look at what's working, what isn't working at a molecular level, and change everything that we can do, okay? So the science of recruitment is where we're putting theories to test. We've got an idea to do this differently. We've got an idea to get rid of CVs for good, and we're going to try a different system. This is the sort of thing we're looking at, and Omni-recruitment is one of the things that's birthed out of our trial and error of trialing all these different ways. So we're not just doing the same thing, expecting different results. We want it to be. We want to make the advancements. Okay. So what was quite common on the client side of recruitment is when they're thinking about going to an agency, the question is, do we go to an agency or do we not? That's their business case. Fundamentally, that's the question that's being asked. What we're trying to do is change it from that to, when we go to an agency, which product shall we pick?
Okay. Very cool.
So Omni-recruitment, for example, we've got a whole suite of different models. Okay, we're in Australia, we know we're the only agency that does that, so it's a genuine USP. And say if you was a client of mine and we're having a coffee in Sydney, and you said we need X Y Z, I would be saying to you, well, these are your options. Which would you like? Which is a lot more professional. Here's the price. Do you want to do it or don't you? Okay. And it may be that, Michelle, you'll end up going back to the traditional route, and that's perfectly fine. It may still suit you, but it's just nice to have that choice.
So when you say you have a different product selection, what do you mean by that?
Different models. Okay, so my analogy I tend to use, so we use a recruitment menu, is what we send out when people ask for more information. So the analogy we use is the recruitment industry as it is. It's the same as going to a restaurant, which you like when you need to. Okay, and the only thing on the menu is a steak. Okay, it's a lovely steak, I'm sure it is, but you can have variations of it. It can be well done, it can be rare, it can have peppercorn sauce or blue cheese, whatever. It changes. You can have variations, but it's the same product dressed up different ways. Okay, which it represents 99.9% of the recruitment industry. Okay. What we've done is we've added a fish dish, we've added a vegetarian dish. You may still, when you're there, oh, it's nice, now I've got options, go back to your steak and whatever the variety of how you like it cooked and presented that's your preference. But you still like to have that choice. So we're just putting those extra couple of choices in there in the sense of models themselves.
So can you give me an example of a couple of the different models and how they would run differently?
The main one is our low cost model. Okay, so a pain point for people that use agencies, if it hasn't worked out, is it can appear to be an expensive exercise. Okay, so for example, the biggest personal fee that I've done has been 98,500, and so that's before they pay the salary. Okay, and I understand that's going to be a big shock to a business to pay, and especially as it was done so quickly. That was a week turnaround, so obviously they feel.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I could do with one of them right now if anybody's listening. So it can be quite an expensive exercise. So the moment, the principle of that is that we're basing it on a percentage of the salary. And where I'm saying the variations of the steak, we can do executive search. That's a variation of it. We can do labour hire, where it's a percentage of the hourly rate. So it's still the same thing. It's just chopped up different ways. Okay. In fact, what tends to be the case, which is fair to assume, is what seems cheaper, like with contracts, with a percentage of an hourly or a day rate, overall ends up being the most expensive because you end up owning nothing and paying a lot. Okay, just a little bit of free advice there. Recruiters love it when we get a contract because we still own everything we've got and we're just charging a premium, but it looks like it's nothing. Okay. So there's the monetary side with that. The low cost option we do is an alternative. So we do a flat fee of just 2K. Okay. We can only do it on certain roles, but the product is different. So it's not a placement service. We'll turn around. So it's not a discount. It is a completely different service. But we guarantee them 5 matching CVs and they've got all their information. So they own all 5 of those. Okay. If we've only provided the minimum. Okay. What this means is they could effectively take all 5 of them. Right? So instead of just paying for one, it gets even more value with it as well. Okay, but they've got some guarantees with it as well, which work really well for the clients, but interlinks to the other options. So if it ends up that the low-cost option they've given it a go and it hasn't quite worked, they can offset that against the more traditional route anyway. So they're not out of pocket anyway, because we'll still work until the job's done. So we've got the structure where we've got these different models. They can try to save money, try to save time. They can try to have a slightly different service, but they all interlink anyway. They all communicate with each other, so that they could switch at any point as well. So ultimately, what this means is people get a chance to try something different. Hopefully, it works. If it does, brilliant. If I save my clients money, they'll come back to me every time. If I've dropped 80% off a fee, they're going to be very happy with that. In my experience, it tends to please people. But if not, they're guaranteed anyway. So it's a safe sort of trial to do, and that's how they interlink.
Nice. Well, and I would suspect that a lot of companies out there, especially well-established companies, are just going to go, we need this person, we need a really good person, and we need them now. We should have done this 6 months ago. We didn't. Just get me the best, get them now. And they understand how much it would cost to go and find that person, to go and nurture them. And you've already got kind of that realm there. And then there's a whole other group of business owners that are like, well, it's just not in the budget. It's which kind of pains me. But, and we went over that, is that they're trying to do it the wrong way to save themselves a penny in order to because they're thinking this is the budget I have, as opposed to this how much I'm going to make when I have this person in place doing their job properly. Any other comments that you want to add to that, or am I just preaching to the choir?
You are preaching to the choir, but I can probably add to it a little bit, because firstly, I do actually understand where companies go from, whether I don't have the budget for it, it's a no. Okay, because if we desensitize ourselves to the actual hard dollars on it, then we're not doing it justice for anybody. We need to acknowledge that. Okay, so I do get it, but in that same token, there's also the reverse. Okay, so we've done lots of research. I haven't done it for the States yet. I have had a look, but I haven't got the conclusive information. But for Australia, on its average salaries, and factoring in everything on the cost of a bad hire, so this may be for an agency, maybe not. It's the retraining staff, the damage to the brand, the time spent from the people taken away from the actual job they should be doing to do it. It's between 120 and 150k per person. Exactly. So what we've done there is suppose just looking at the agency fee, which is a part of it, and we're not meaning to desensitize ourselves to it. Everything else factored in is a lot more than that, and if you get it wrong, the cost is way over that fee you're debating about.
Absolutely.
Now, these facts and figures are pretty solid for Australia, so I can use them in presentations. I don't have the same for the States, but I would imagine the formula, how they created this, is going to be pretty similar. So I think you could probably gauge that as an idea, that maybe the hard dollars is a little bit, or quite a bit more, especially if you do it wrong. Even if you do it right, than just that fee itself. That fee, we need to make a profit on that, So there's lots of things that go into this as well.
Oh, absolutely. So give us an example of one of your Cinderella stories. Somebody that came to you super frustrated and left elated, or, one of those.
You know what? I'm probably going to use that same example I used earlier. And this is, I probably could put out a few others, but as you quite rightly said, I haven't had my coffee yet. So this is lethargic Tom. But that particular placement, that was a bit unique. So the person ended up being at 422,000 was the salary, all in. He was doing very well. But
just purely out of curiosity, who gets that kind of a salary?
Someone who is the only person that can do it.
Which makes me think that would be the founder of the business, which makes me think, how do you hire out the founder?
So this is
how does that work exactly?
This particular company, it was a kind of a left field developer. So they're quite interesting how they do what they do. But they've just done some rezoning in Sydney. So the legislation around what you can and can't do in certain areas had all changed. And what they did was a little bit different. And they needed someone to reflect this. So they needed a land acquisition manager that was all across the new legislation changes. So that made the small pool tiny. but across a certain component of it. Okay, and there was only one person that did, where he came from a different industry, so he knew something from there. It was across this new legislation, and put the two together, he eventually was the only person that could do it. Yeah, his name was
Wow.
Andrew. So we had to look a little left field to get him, but they'd been looking for about 6 to 9 months for this person, I think. But also knowing they've exhausted the market, but what they hadn't done is try to look at it a little bit differently. So I said, we filled this job in a week. He had 3 interviews in that week. They were so happy with that they didn't quabble over that fee. I think even that was paid within a week as well, which is rare. They usually leave us hanging a little bit longer than that. And you know, that was a lovely example. It's just something that, okay, we've got some tools, we've got some expertise. We're going to genuinely deliver something that you've just told us does not exist, and we've proved you wrong in a nice way.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a great story. I love that. So what might be some of the frustrations that somebody's having right now, and they're thinking, oh my God, Tom, I need you so bad. You got to come save us. What's going on for them? What problems are they seeing in their hiring and recruiting?
Okay, so there's a bit of a generalisation, but there's also the here and now. The here and now is all the sales staff. Everybody wants something, whether it's a BDM, a sales director, a junior to come in and learn it, what have you. This is where people are struggling for the COVID after effects, if you like. If we are in the after effects yet, but that's another conversation. But ultimately, this is what everyone's looking for. Okay, so what people are struggling with is they can't get what they want for that money. They're only getting, sounds bad, B grade products at a premium, and that's if they can get them. So that's causing them some problems at the moment. My advice to all of these people, and I'm quite open about this now, especially something that's a transferable skill, is look for people outside of your sector. Okay, so there's people itching to get out of retail, for example, that have those skills, but they're not corporate. You just need to smooth that over and bring them in, and they're gonna fly. Okay, as opposed to just looking, well, this is the sector and this is all we've got. Start to look outside of it, and people will want to move sector. That will make sure you still get your superstar people, and you can generate that interest that way round. That's the problem. The here and now one. Yeah, the generalisation. I'll come back to that one because I've lost my thread of where I was going to go
That's okay.
with that one.
That's all good. Because I know that a lot of people think, oh, well, I can just do it myself and I'll save some money. And I can give you examples in almost any industry where that is a terrible way to think, and it's not really going to get you ahead. So, well, you can come back to it, but if somebody's listening to this right now and they know they want more from you, how do they start their journey with you?
The first things first is have the conversation. Don't put it off with fear of. It's a bit like going to an expensive clothing store. I'm not going in there in case a salesperson tries to sell me a jacket that I don't need. Okay, but you're robbing yourself of some opportunities. You have some self control. You know, have these conversations. All right. There is a time where you can do this yourself. Okay. And that's if you've got time to recruit. So we don't need the person in a hurry. Brilliant. Do it yourself. Or if it's an easy role to fill. But you can speak to a recruiter and they will give you this information. Okay, they'll tell you how difficult this is going to be and what the market's like, so you can help qualify whether you should do it yourself or not. Because if you can do it yourself and it's not business critical, then save your money. I do turn around and say to people, you can the same thing. You know, you can. Why are you not doing this yourself? And then they turn around and say, actually, we have absolutely no spare time. No problem. I'm doing it. And I'll be saving you your time as opposed to your money. You know, but if you need the person yesterday, if it's a hard to fill role, then absolutely engage an agency. But also do a bit of your own research to back it up, because they will sometimes tell you a few things which suit them. This could be things around standard salaries and what have you. What I tend to do when it comes around to people's salaries, I tend to present people to clients for what they're currently on or they're previously on. So instead of saying I want or they want X amount, and especially if they're on a percentage of salary, so there tends to be a little bit buffered on top. Okay, if we look at what they're currently on, you know if you can afford to better that or not. Okay, if they're not working for that company anymore and they've had a little gap for whatever reason, you still want to better it because you want them to start off on the right foot. You don't want to say, okay, well, this is what you want before, so I'm offering you the same. You kind of starting off on the wrong foot as well, you know?
Mm, I like that. And I had to laugh when you say people are afraid to go into those high-end stores. And I'm like, well, I've had the opposite experience. If they don't like the way you look or the way you're dressed that particular day, it's like, you don't deserve to be in here, honey. Trying to get them to have a conversation is harder. So absolutely, peeps. Dr. Tom, he's awesome. And you'll be able to get a better assessment of what it is that you're looking for and how having a professional recruiter might be able to help you with that. And I'm assuming they can go to purplepatchconsulting.com, correct?
That's correct. That's sitting there. We've recently done up the site, so you probably find some of my grammatical errors still there. Feel free to send them across to me. As a recruiter, I do have thick skin, so I'm okay. I'll just cry myself to sleep when you find them.
And all the favorites and behaviors all spelt with U's and, all weird things like that. But it's okay, peeps. We'll figure it out.
Yes, I apologise. I am British, and
they'll tell me I have spelling errors. It's like, no, that's how we spell things. You're good. Awesome.
we did need that caveat, so thank you for that.
Nice. So I have to ask you this: at what point in life did you know that you were special kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
I think it's something that's innate in people. So I had quite a poor upbringing. And I just remember as a kid, I always wanted to do these little things. I had these ambitions. I wanted my family to have more than what they had, or just some more security more than anything. And I kind of figured it going into adult life that if I really wanted those things, you can't do that working somewhere else for someone else. Okay, you need to be the architect of your own future. Okay, to do that, you need to take a slight leap of faith, work out what it is you're good at, make it happen, persevere, and then you've got it in control within reason. You pay yourself what you're genuinely worth, and you can design your future. So that for me is a bit of a fire in the belly situation. It's either you can't force yourself to be that person, you either are or you're not.
Very cool. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it immensely. Any last words for our peeps?
My favourite thing, which I always tell people, but I'm thinking this is good, and we haven't really touched on the candidates for here, if there's any of those listening as well, is don't compete in a crowded space.
And how do you not compete in a crowded space?
There's always ways. We're all unique around little way. Every business has its own USPs. Every individual has its zenith and their little point which purely determines them. Find out what it is. Let the world know, and everyone will remember you.
Nice, like our $400,000 recipient. Go figure out what that one thing is that they can only hire you for, and suddenly you find your salary goes up. That is brilliant. Yeah, you've been awesome. Thank you, peeps. This is Michelle Nedlock. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We love to help build and scale your business, so be sure to subscribe on your favorite app to the business to this podcast. This is why you have show notes, people. To show up next time, subscribe. We love having you, and we love helping you scale your business.